Welcome back. So as of now, we have seen the conceptual wise creation of the project and entity sets, entity types, associations, relationships, how we can build and when we need the number of entity types or entity sets under a project. So what will be the front facing entity set and what will be the supporting entity set in the project and etc. And we have now full idea of service implementation, what kinds of methods we will be implementing, and also we have idea about our runtime artifacts here. So DPC or MPC EXT. So here uh, sometimes we will be using MPC EXT, as we know that. So whatever the common types we need to use, we need to have, they will be going into MPC EXT, like our deep structure, to make use of that structure in our create deep entity. So apart from that, so there are few more uses. I'll come to that, and this usage. So the usage of this MPC EXT, whatever we do, that may be a code based, the way for code based V4 OData service implementation as well. So I think I thought it would be a good if we can have some overview on this MPC EXT. And apart from this, what we have here. So in the data model itself, if we go ahead and uh, look at create, so we have these many options here. So we know all of these options except this function import, right? So this function import is the one we're learning today. So if we or the consumer want to perform any of the actions, for example, so those actions will be implemented at OData side in the form of function imports. So for example, so even in our app, what we are going to look at is we will be having approve button on our app. To achieve the approve functionality, we just need the trip ID and it's a current status. Okay, so based on those two values, we can perform additional checks in the backend, and we can simply simply um, move the status to approved status or whatever the next possible status. So if at all, uh, if there is an error, and if we want to return back with an error, we can still do that. So it's for simple purposes. So in this case, what we will be achieving here is the payload. There will not be any huge payload. There will not be payload at all. So it's just straight format parameters in the form of parameters. So in our project, let me go ahead and create one function import so that we may get some idea. So let's say this one approve approve trick. Let me say this. So in this one, we will have the function import parameters here. So what are the parameters we need? We are going to import along with this function import. So if you see here in the uh, function import structure itself, so yes, this is the function import name. And if we have any return type, a specific return type from this one, we can specify that particular type. So for example, if we are requesting, so if we are requesting any data, uh, um, posting any single data, a return will be return type can be specified. So in here, uh, the HTTP methods, whatever applicable, only two types of HTTP methods applicable: get or post. So there is no delete, there is no update, and there is no query or etc. So it will just straightforward get and post. These are the two methods possible on a function import. So when I say get, let's say I'm going with get, then the return type, we might need to specify something. So let's say I do not want to import get entity of my trip header, for example. Okay, so if a consumer uh, calls any function import as an action display, let's say there is an action display on UI side or consumer side. So whenever user clicks on the display, we just take the trip ID as a input parameter and we just return our whole information of that particular trip. So let me say before that, get trip. So this return type, I'll just mention it's a entity type, a return. Okay, the entity type, let me choose travel header. And the cardinality, I'm just specifying if it is going to be a n records, then I'll specify 0 to n. Otherwise, I'll just go ahead with 0 to 1 information. So returning entity set, it's going to be travel header. Oh, sorry. So this is applicable only if we choose 0 to n cardinality. So in this case, this input enables. So otherwise, it will straight away pick the travel header one-to-one cardinality information. Okay, so let me change this, and it's going to be a get protocol, HTTP protocol, and action for entity type. So this is just the action. What is the if the UI or consumer wants to implement this as an action, they can implement as an action on this particular entity type. So let me save this one, uh, generate this one. That is get trip. Get trip is going to be our function import name in this case. So here, once it is generated, I would like to go to our dpc-ext class. So dpc-ext, let me open it in a new session. Let's go here. So in here, we know if we create entity type or entity set where we need to implement the business logic. So then we'll just um, pick the respective HTTP method based generated method name here. Accordingly, we go ahead and insert our business logic. But in terms of function imports, we must be doing it in different method here. So which is going to be again application service runtime here. So in the application service runtime, we must see the execute action here. So if you see here, execute action, the description itself, if just in case if you forget, there's execute action method here. So you can type with the function import. So the description is already mentioned with the function import. So this is what the method which we will be redefining to achieve the function import functionality. So execute action. So this is the only function, whatever the number of function imports you have in your project, it doesn't matter. This is the only method triggers each time whenever there is a function import called from the consumer. So how the differentiation is going means, so we will just specify with the action name here. Okay. So if you see here, IV action name, so this has been marked as obsolete. If you see clearly here, so some places wherever we see, we prefer not to use these parameters. So instead, we will make use of this IO tech context request, tech request context. So in this case, you just let me go ahead and use this one, or even case IO tech context get function function import name. If you see, there is a method, so function import name. And now let me go ahead and implement the logic here when. So this constant, the function name, function import, whatever we have created in our project, where would that be stored? Again, in the MPC class. So let me go here into not this one. Mm, that is not open. So let me open MPC class and see in the attributes for my function import, if anything created here. So country name, yeah, interesting. There is nothing created for my function import. So travel, yeah. So function import, nothing created for us. So we will just go ahead and use the value of the function import name, whatever we have created in our gateway project. So now that's it. So now we know where to implement our function import logic. So this when, let me create one more import here, function import approve trip. So in this case, I would like to have a return type here. The return type saying whether the trip has been approved or not. Okay. So let me create one entity type for function return, function import return, return type, function import return type, and function import return type set. Let me say that. And in this one, just create the property like message type is, again, I think we can increment or create a sequence number or counter like this. We can make that as a key field, and let's put this as integer, and message type again is going to be idiom string. That's okay. And now let me create another property, message. Message, this is again idiom string, Okay, perfect. So now we have the entity set as well for this, and at the same time what we do, we will just go ahead to this approve trip and we look at these function import parameters. So in this parameters, let's go ahead and create the parameter name trip ID. So in here, let me select this string, and even here we can assign a map type here. So the data element can be assigned. So let me go ahead and assign my data type, um, data element, trip header, and I'll just pick up this data element and I'll go ahead and assign in here to ensure there is no data type mismatch. Okay, so that's perfect. And now again, I'm going to this get trip. So in the get trip again, I'm going to assign the trip ID. So trip ID is mandatory for in our both the cases. So EDM string. So by this we must be experts now creating data types and data types into as per our convenience. So if you see, we have these two parameters created on our function imports. So on this approve trip, let me pick this name and I'll just generate it. Come on, where is it? Uh, okay, cardinality. I did not set for this one. So for if you see approve trip, I haven't selected any entity type here. So let me select function import return type. So here we'll just say if there is any error or the success. So in this case, let me say, what is it? Yeah, it's 0 to 1. I don't want this. But in approve trip case, I would treat this as a post request. It's coming in and it's going to be a post request. So action again, travel header, done. So let us check, don't have any errors, and let's generate this one. And meanwhile, let's go in here and we have in another case, approve trip is going to be our another function import. So here we don't have anything at the moment, but in get trip we know how we can export the data or what data we need to get. So and wherever you see, so how we are going to export the data, as this is the common method, and if you see the return types are completely different. So for get function import, the return type is different, and approve trip the return type is completely different. So we know how to deal with that because we have a specific method to convert our structured information into type reference to data format. So we will be using the same method here again to achieve uh, sending a successful or meaningful response to the consumer. So in this case, what we are expecting here, so we would definitely need the parameters here. So these are the keys in terms of retrieving the information. And in here, IO technical request context, we will be, so this ID parameters again, it has been marked as obsolete here, if you see this. So we will be getting these parameters using IOTech context request. So if you feel uncomfortable choosing the method, what method I need to choose, we can open that in a new session and look at the interface. What are the methods available, and accordingly we can make our own suitable option here. So let me paste this one here and pick the only interface. Okay, there you go. Function import is the interface, and in this interface, if you see here, get parameters. So we have already used the function import name here, and if you see, if we need the entity type, we can even get the return entity type name. Okay. Okay, good. So let me go ahead here and lt parameters equals to, let me use this instance here and get parameters. Okay, so this step is required for both of our operations, both of our function imports, or whatever the function imports we use. These parameters definitely need to get the specific information. So in this case, here we will be restricting or going into the respective parameters. So here in the get trip, we know that there will be a parameter uh, called trip ID. Okay, so this trip ID is going to be um, uh, our key here. So we will use this trip ID and we go here into our parameters. Okay, LV trip ID type. I'll just say my trip ID type here. Okay, so here what I do, I'll just take my trip ID here from parameters, LT parameters, and here name equals to. So if you are not sure about what the parameters exist in this one, we can again go ahead into our interface and we can check these parameters and type. So we all know how to check this one. So in the structure, name and value formats. Okay, these are the field names we get in our parameters table. So name equal to, we just say it's a case sensitive value. Okay, sorry, whatever we have here, that's going to be the parameter name here, and we pick the value whatever has been in that one. Trip ID equals to, I think we need to convert this into alpha. So if you, I'm not sure how the data is in the table.
Hello.
Maybe yes.
Yeah, Changal, we see another method in that. function import get converted parameter. Then
Yep.
we convert.
Yep. So this uh, converted parameters, it's data. So if we will not be using this one, so this will give us data. Okay.
Okay.
So that's not the same. So we will not be using that. So in this table, I think we do not need to definitely apply the conversion exit because we don't have any leading zeros here. Our number range object doesn't have any leading zeros. We just created our number range object without having it. So we don't need to apply any conversion exit here, but instead, sorry, select single star from our table. Come on, yep. Into data, no, not data. So we should take reference ls header from our MPC class, because if I say into, so here we do not have exact structure of the entity type. So what the framework will be doing whenever we call the method to convert to type reference data, it will be including all the client as well. So that time it's going to be a mismatch with the fields whatever we have created in our gateway entity type. So I need to avoid that happening. So I'll take this ZCL ZCL trip MPC T T. So what is the cardinality? This is again depending on the cardinality, whatever we have chosen. It's going to be, I think, 0 to 1. Yep. So TS, let me do that. TS travel header type. And at the same time, let me create it for return as well. TS um, function import. Where is this? I think our class is not reloaded. Let me pick this here. It's the same type, ts underscore with this name. Okay, so let me map into corresponding fields of ls where uh, trip id equals to our lv trip id. Okay, if is initial, then let us call the method copy data to reference, and in this we will just pass this ls header into our er data. Okay, so let me do a check. No errors. That's fine. So let us implement this approved trip soon. For now, I'll just activate or get trip function import implementation. Okay, so now how we test this one? So that's pretty simple. So we can go to our gateway client or postman, like we tested yesterday. Gateway client. So it's not the service. Let me go to my travel app test group and let me pick this one. It's just for my reference. So this is going to be what is this? Yeah, get call and trip planner service. And on this um, function import, what is the function import here is going to be uh, sorry, function imports will not be listed down here in the entity sets. Let me go ahead and pick my function import name. So get trip is going to be the entity set, and it's normal as usual, like how we use the parameters after a question mark. We just input our parameters, the list of parameters and its values. So in our case, it's trip ID equals to, and whatever the trip ID we have here in the database. So let me pick up one of the trip ID here. And that's it. So let's trigger this one. Okay. Let me for here if there is anything happening. So 500. So yes, it has come here. Something going wrong. Yes, the parameters doesn't have any value. Maybe I'm doing something. I don't know. So let me go here and look at locals. Definitely IT parameter will have one value. Yes, it has the value. LT parameters. The LT param. Oh, sorry. So it has with the capital letters. If you see the parameters, input parameter doesn't have the capital letters. The obsolete one doesn't have the capital letters. So the instance one, it is already converted into capital letters. So that's what we need to implement here. Let me go ahead and make it capital, please. Yes. Okay, execute again. And let's see what happens. Yes, we have got the trip number and we have got the trip details as well in this. Okay, so let's go ahead and here we go. So we see the information. So in this case, if you see, we have not implemented any of the methods, any of the methods uh, generated by the framework. So this now you may ask, when do I need to go for function import, or when do I need to go for a entity set, entity type and entity set creation? That's good. So here everything works based on the parameters on the function import. Okay, but whereas entity entity type and entity set, we will have different kinds of implementations. So if you have been asked to retrieve some information based on any one or two parameters, so here again number of parameters matters. So there is nothing like we can implement such or limited number of parameters on your function import, but there will be definitely a limit on the URL. Whatever the website we open, there will be a limitation on this, like 800 characters or 650 characters, something like that. So to comply those norms, until whatever the URL supports, we can input those many parameters. There is no limitation on this one, but the function imports does not support update delete functionalities. So if you say delete functionality is not supported, mm, again we can achieve it because we have this trip ID, and we can even give the uh, facilitation to the user for making it a post call. Okay, and we can take the trip ID and we can perform delete. So that is different way of doing it. Okay, but on this particular entity set, we will not be able to implement all HTTP methods straightforward. Okay, so that is the uh, difference between function import and entity set or entity type. So whenever we need to do some simple activities, approve, mainly the function import used for actions, triggering actions from UI point of view, not for the data, bulk data fetching or binding to any table or etc. So these entity sets, whatever we create here, they are straight away visible to the consumer. So if you see here the entity sets, so so that the consumer can easily make binding using these entity sets, whereas function imports cannot be bound to any of the UI controls by the consumer. Okay, so keeping all these, we should be using function imports. Yep.
Master,
Yes.
can we achieve the same functionality that we are trying to do using the function import? Can we do it through the method implementation, CRUD operations, any of that?
Yes. So this one it's a get entity, right? In our terminology. So get entity.
That's equal to get entity.
Yes.
But for approve trip, like here we're trying to do.
Yes. This is the action. Yes. So this is the action. So in the post implementation, so that's completely different. So post expects entity set post expects the payload, right? So here we will not be sending any payload. If you see this, and though the action here we have created approve trip, Okay, approved trip, we will be using post method for this, and even in this case we will not be inputting any payload for function import. It's the only the parameters, the URL parameters that we supply, that's it. So, and based on this, so for post approved trip, and we will be giving another parameter that user action equal to, so whatever the user action, so if it is save, and this will be in agreement with the consumer or UI developer, whatever. So if the user is giving save action, then just we need to change the status to a draft. Okay, and if the user action is approve, then we just need to move this status. Again, save will expect some payload. In our example that we have taken, save expects new data. Okay, whatever the latest information user has entered, that we need to bring back into database and save it. But save action was not the good example, so here we can say approved. Okay, the user action is approved. So now in this case we need to check whatever the previous status available on this trip request, and based on that, if it is approved, then we need to change the request status, trip request status to next status. Or if it is rejected, then we just keep the status as it is. Or if it needs to go back to previous status, one of the previous statuses, we will move back the request to previous statuses. So these two, approve or reject, will be the right examples for this. So in this case, we do not need to input any payload. We do not need to get anything from this. So based on that one, and but instead we are giving meaningful message as a response once our operation completed at our uh, uh, transaction level. Okay, so this is function import. So for function import, what again, three steps. So we need to create this as a function import on our gateway project, function import, and we need to ensure there are parameters or the return types and etc. So in latest versions, in this version, without its return type, it's not gonna accept. Okay, no return type, and the parameters whatever we give here, so those parameters must be inputted from consumer point of view. So these parameters are going to be URL level, and the method that we need to implement on our DPC ext class is going to be application services runtime execute action. So in this execute action, we will just implement our function import, specifying whenever it matches to our function import name accordingly. Okay, I think someone waiting here. Yep. Yes, Prasad.
This is Hari.
Hari.
So
Yes.
can it display the dependent entity?
No, no,
I mean,
no navigation is possible on using function imports.
okay, only one entity set it.
Exactly. So again, so this get request, I might picked up it incorrectly. So if this also can be used if we don't see anything, any other HTTP method required on this particular entity set, so we can achieve this one. Okay, in this way, rather implementing get entity, so we can go ahead with this one. So if we see there are other create entity or delete entity or anything, any such HTTP method involved on that particular requirement, then this is not the preferred way to uh, implement the get request here. Okay.
So in this case, when users select get based on the trip ID, right?
Correct.
So will it also trigger the
Get entities? No, no, no,
get-
no,
no.
no. If you see here, the endpoint URI endpoint is not on the entity set, trip header entity set. It's on function import function import name get trip. So this is what our where is this? Yeah, our function import name. Function import get trip. Whereas our entity set for travel header is going to be this travel header. The endpoint will be the catch here.
What I am thinking here, maybe
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Go on.
To that implementation
Yes.
function import. So if I create any deep structure, you have created one global deep structure, right?
Correct.
So that structure, if I fill up and then I can pass it on, right? Here, copy that reference.
See, whatever you're doing
So
here,
dependent.
yeah. So I'm just trying to make you understand here. So during the definition of the function import itself, we have clearly said this is what my return type is. Do you see that?
Okay, then it is going to validate here. I think no, even if I
exactly.
Let us say if I implement
Yes.
deep structure, right?
Yes.
Still it is going to validate
Absolutely.
return type.
Absolutely. So it's not going to be validation, it will be doing a mapping. So whatever the data matches to this structure here, so only that data will be copied as a reference, and that reference, that structure will be returned back. If nothing is matching, the structure will go as blank. The information will be blank.
No.
Okay.
Hello, Shankar.
Yes.
In my previous project,
Yeah.
function import they are using for create new record.
Yep.
What list application.
Yep.
So initial screen they have added a create button. And
Yes. Yes.
all the default values it will be written.
Yes. Yes. That is also one example, because so whatever, if even in our case, if we want to display to the user what the temporary or the trip number whenever user clicks on create button, okay, so it's just the number range, the new number generated new number user is expecting, UI is expecting to display to the user whenever it clicks on it. So it's just a generation of the number, right? The simple functionality. It's again called a action kind of thing. It's not carrying. It's yeah.
And it was fetching employee department.
Yes.
On default.
Correct. Yeah. So whatever the chunks of it, we can make use of it. Okay.
Changal,
Yes.
Maybe here,
Mm.
do we have this copy reference here? I mean, and while posting the any new trip, right? I want to take reference of existing trip.
Existing trip. That's again how we handle it in our ABAP code, right? So whenever user creates a travel request, so it's again how we do it, how we design our application. So if really we need to give a reference, so this is what the information and this is what the dummy request or something. So we can have it as a static one at the UI side, and they can show it rather coming back to the database and fetching one of it. And as per best practices point of view, the reference of the travel request, we can refer to the user uh, the request created by himself. Okay, the security reasons point of view, data security reasons point of view, the one user might not be allowed to know the travel plan of the other user in this case. Okay, to answer your question, yes, it can be static, or it can be the reference from the persisted in the sense whichever the trip number exists in the backend. To in this case, static point of view, the client itself can handle itself. So they will be storing in the form of template, and whenever user clicks on reference using that template, they just populate or copy the request. And the second one, dynamic one, so it could be the request that user have created, or it could be another request. Yes. So in that case, we can make use of this function import like this. What we are doing, the reference trip number will come here, and the information of that particular trip number will go back to the customer, client, consumer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Any other questions on this one? Okay. So going forward in our app, again, we will be using this function import for our approval process. So trip approver and settlement approver, we have two approvers. So they will be whenever they trigger an action at the UI side. So these function imports will be making the request or moving the request forward or backward based on that. And okay, so you have covered create deep entity from execute, and we know why these create entity and delete entity, get entity at application service runtime. If we want to avoid implementing these individual methods, we can straight away go ahead and implement our code in these methods itself, if we are pretty much happy to do that. And okay, so here we have batch processing. So the batch processing is the next topic. Again, I'll be taking you to odata.org, and for this is the reference of that URI conventions, whatever we are just doing it. So here, if you see batch processing, so this batch processing will be triggered based on the URI convention $batch. So if you see here in the URI, there will be a URI keyword $batch, like a dollar filter, a dollar order, a dollar expand. So this is the keyword to identify the $batch. So yesterday we have seen that from our application. Where is that? Yeah, and in this application, I think I do not have it. I don't know. Not sure where it has gone. Okay, anyway. Now it's again the task class. Okay, anyway, I will make that application available and then look at it where it is. So to do $batch, we have seen that I have shown you it made two get calls in a batch mode, one with the entity set and the other one request with the skip top with the paging and also order by. Okay, so similarly we can have n number of operations within a batch. So a um, a change set, we call that as a change set. So each HTTP method will be distinguished in the name of change sets. So a batch can have a number of change sets. So each change set will refer to one HTTP method. It could be a post, or it could be a delete, or it could be update, or it could be get, whatever it is. So to represent that, if you see here, this is one of the batch, okay, having multiple operations in this one. So the first one where the batch started, so this is the batch started. If you see here, so this batch started here. Okay, so this is one batch, this is a plain request, and this batch started here, and this in this batch, if you see a change set started here, right? So in this change set we have post call, and there will not be ending for this one. If there is an end, it will be batch, sorry, it will end with change set, but we have another change set within that batch again. So this change set is with put call. If you see, this is the service and the entity set name, and with all the parameters, whatever the URI parameters are inputted from the consumer, they all will be listed in this call, particular HTTP call. And this change set has finished, and finishing change set will be, if you see here, this change set or batch. So this batch started, how we identify whether it is beginning or ending. So if the batch started, there will be two hyphens at the beginning and the ending of this batch name. So this is basically a batch name. So it's not necessary to be having batch name like this. We can put our own batch name. So don't be worry about it. Okay, but the real time the system will generate like this the GUID. So this is basically a batch name. And if you see, there is no hyphen or no pattern ending after batch name, and same thing for change set as well. So change set beginning, there will be two hyphens in the beginning at the starting of this change set name, and there will be nothing at the end. Whenever we finish or complete the change set, this one again, another change set starting, and whenever we finish the change set or batch, uh, change set, we will just finish with this change set ending two hyphens of that particular change set. And again, there is new batch started after this change set, that's fine. And we have the batch complete batch finishing at the end. So this is the batch finishing. The conclusion would be, whenever change set or batch starting, there will be two hyphens at the beginning, and whenever they are getting finished, along with these two hyphens at the beginning, there will be two hyphens added at the end of the batch or change set name. And the hierarchy wise, batch comes first always, so change sets are part of batch. So this is the statement we should remember. The change sets are part of batch. So we can go ahead and implement our batch processing here. But to accommodate batch processing, we need to do some changes in our DPC ext class. Okay, so for accommodation, what we need to do. So here we will have the same names here, whatever the terminology, chain set or chain set end and chain set begin. So here the same name here, if you see, chain set begin, chain set end, and chain set process. So these methods will let us know. Yeah. Yes.
A chain set is nothing but a collection of options plus.
It's an individual operation. Individual operation.
Oh.
So it's a this is what I'm referring to, chain set. So this is one chain set here. So always a chain set will have only one operation. Okay, but batch will have multiple chain set, and in the chain set there will be in the batch there will be n number of HTTP HTTP requests, but within chain set it will be considered as one HTTP method.
Okay, that means one get or post like that.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, sir. So in
Okay.
real time, where do you use it actually? Mass updating or mass upload?
No. So that will be mass process, but it's not upload or something. It will be constructively called by the consumer. For example, UI5 application, there are mechanisms where it will be converted as batch. Okay, we will see that whenever we enter into a transactional processing of any of the data, then that will be submitted as batch from the consumer itself. For get request, the framework itself will convert the requests into batches. Okay, so whenever you trigger a batch, get call from consumer, you might be ending up triggering multiple breakpoints. So what we need to understand from that is it will apply the paging concept. Okay, if our result set is going more than 100 records, then it will trigger another get call to fetch another 100 records. So finally the gateway will be taking responsibility to consolidate all these result sets and sending back to consumer. We do not need to worry about the consolidation. So all we need to do is our get entity set method needs to have the paging concept implemented in our implementation, business logic implementation. That's it. Okay, and okay, not that one. Okay, yes. Coming to our DPC ext class here. So if you see, I just brought this change set process change set end to the top. Okay, so that we can see the starting methods 1, 2, and 3. So whenever this names itself making more sense. So whenever change set begins, the control will come here. So what are we intending to do in case when the changes has begun? So let me redefine this one. Okay, save. And change set end of change set. Let's implement this one again. Redefine. Okay, perfect. and change set process. So this is what the major method that we will have the more business logic implemented into it. So save it. That's it. Let me go back and filter this one for ease. So this execute action finished and change set begin. So this change set begin, we will not be doing anything here. So it's uh, just see defer mode. We will just set this defer mode to true to make initiate the change set helper, and also um, whenever the change set helper goes and request for the data, then it happens internally. So we do not need to really get into that right now. So CV mode equal to map underscore true, defer mode equal to true. So this defer is always wherever we see whenever there is no requirement of particular data, the framework will be deferring it, like we have seen in our navigation properties. So whenever it is really requested, then only it will just response back. And change set end. So this change set end will be called once the change set operation, whatever the HTTP method we have requested, has been finished successfully. So we will be mostly doing here commit work. So for that particular change set, we will be doing commit work, or if we have any locks or something used in our implementation. So this in the change set, we will be releasing all those locks and committing works. Okay, so this is mainly for that one. And change set process. So this is what the real processing of the change set, what needs to be processed here. So change set process. So here we will have the parameter CT change set data, and this CT change set data will come with all these operations. So whatever the operations in this one, everything will come into change set CT change set data. So whenever change set is coming with particular uh, entity type and etc., let's go ahead and okay, let me take this one and let us go into this type and see what it has. Okay, I think I can try to go from here. And TY change set data, and in the change set data we have this type. That's good. Again, we have these many parameters inside this, the attributes. This is including the TY change set request. Okay, this is the structure which we are talking right now. So if you see here, this operation type. So what is the operation type? So whether it is create or update or delete, or it's not these single letters. So it will be create entity like CE, update entity like UE, something like this. If you see create deep entity, CD means create deep entity. So this information will be coming in our entity set here. Sorry, entity uh, change set data. Correct. So based on this, we will influence create calling the respective methods there if they are implemented, or if those methods are not implemented, then we will be implementing our own logic then and there itself. But it is not recommended to implement the whole logic there, because that will be the common place for all batch processing. So if we do implement in the change set process, um, that will make the business logic clumsy there. So we will not be doing that. So here, create entity. If the create entity comes, let's do or call the create entity method. Or if it is create stream, so this create stream we are yet to see it. So this is the stream word is used for creating attachments using OData services. So CM, create stream, and delete entity. So they are the keys we can see. So we don't really need to go one by one here. So what I wanted to tell you is the operation type will tell us what kind of operation or HTTP method coming into on the entity type. So operation number, so it's just an integer to make the uniqueness in that particular change set data. And this media data, the description if you see here, create stream and update stream only. And even slug is for the streaming data. So whatever, if we have those kinds of data, this slug and media, these two properties will be used there. And request headers, so these request headers, whatever the headers we see here at the left side here, so these are the HTTP request headers. So if we wanted to consider any of these headers, so basically here application data, the headers whatever we have seen last time. So like this content type, what is the content type, and length of this. And if there are any headers we need to consider during the HTTP calls, we will be referring to this one. But for now, I have not seen any example where we'll be referring to request headers here. So the request context. So this is the context what we have seen in the uh, tech context. That is what this request context is going to be. And entry provider, that means IO data provider. And if there is any expand, so this is the common method actually. So if you see here message container, we have the message container as well here. And the content ID and content ID reference, so these information we can just see. So these are uh, referenced or come with string, and these two are dependent ones. But here majorly what we need to consider here is, so operation type and the entry provider, and these parameters we need to be passing to respective methods. So let us go ahead and implement this batch processing in our case. If you see the other expand strings, so expand string and entity descriptor, we have headers, rather than again they are relisted as headers here. Okay, and let me go ahead and look at it how we use this one. So if I go into this one, mm, So entity expand string, not that one. Request header. Operation type is the one. Operation type equal to, for example, create deep. So in this case, what we will be doing here is we will just make call to the create deep entity method. Uh, create, come on, is that what it is? Genset process. Okay, give me a moment. Let me use. Okay, uh, perfect. Let me see why this is not coming. Okay, so this is not in the same. This is not in the same interfaces. That could be the reason. Okay, let me copy this entire. Okay, this redefinition, right? After redefinition, I think we need to call genset create deep entity application. Hmm, yeah, there we go. Maybe better we specify me. Okay, so in this one, I will data provider and I will expand all these parameters. So the only thing what we will be doing here is we will just compare whether it is a deep create or not. So if it is a deep create, then what we are doing, we are just straight away going ahead and calling the deep create deep entity method. So inside this deep create entity method, we are definitely when we implement this create deep entity method, we will be uh, knowing if there are multiple entity sets allowed for deep creation as well. So for example, right now we have a situation or scenario that trip header and trip details are created together, right? And whereas from trip item, again, if we are creating some additional information, let's say accommodation, for example. So in that trip item, if the user having different places of stay for, so in that case, we will not be able to store the data in the items table itself. So that will be again in navigation from items to accommodation. So in this case, if we use the entity set, header entity set, this will be deep create from header items and accommodation. But whereas if the request comes with items, again it is going to be a deep. So items, item and accommodation. These two together considered as deep. So in this manner, it could be any deep scenario for the entity sets those created in the project. Okay, so they can be in any any leg and any navigation. So it could be, for example, here let's say this state, let's say it's not value health for a moment, and we have established in navigation from details to state. So in this case, this will be treated as deep create again. So in this case, we are not sure uh, how to deal with this one. To match this one, we will be having a independent entity set based implementation, create deep implementation implemented in our create deep entity. Okay, so in our case, what always we are expecting is travel header as an entity set. So in this case, let me go back to our payload here. Come on, go back. First request, that's fine. Okay, select. So the implementation, whatever we have put in our create deep entity, as there is no specification, we do not have any other scenario coming across to our OData service. That's what our assumption, and that is the reason we have not mentioned any particular entity set. So if this is the entity set, then perform the deep create in this manner, and the entity set is items, and then perform the operation, the creation operation differently. So that's what we need to be doing here whenever we implement our change set, or commonly as well, not only with respect to the change set, or commonly as well. If the entity name equals to, or entity set name equals to, as I have my entity set name there, I'll just go ahead and put my entity set name. So if my entity set name is travel header, then only take me into this route, because the structure whatever we have prepared here will understand only if the request comes with the travel header as an endpoint. Otherwise, it won't understand. The data reading as well is only applicable if the entity set here on the URI is travel header. Okay, so yes, that's fine. And to do this, to achieve this, we will be modularizing this code, and we will not be putting our implementation like this straight away in the create deep entity method itself. So that all this logic, whatever we have been put here, that will be residing in another independent modularized method. And if this is the entity set, then we will be calling that method. And also, this is going to be a specific response to that particular entity set, and we place this a response again in that particular if condition itself. We will not be mixing it. So for now, I'm just commenting it out, or what I can else if, let me write it like this. Else if entity set name equals to item.
There is space between else and if.
Okay. And entity set name equals to, let me pick up this entity set here, travel details. So by looking at this implementation, you will easily understand why we need to put it. So in this case, what we will be doing, the deep structure with respect to travel details entity and its navigations downwards, not the upwards. Okay, so this will be downwards. So same thing, the downwards word applicable with whenever we are implementing travel header as well. From this travel header downwards, what travel details also covers, but here travel header will not be covered. So that's what this means. Whenever we look at this one, we will get an idea. So for now, I'll just comment this out as we have learned this one, but still we need this data reading to support our existing functionality. That's it. So now let me go back, and same thing we will be doing here. So whatever the entity set comes, we just input that entity set name here. If we want to do that entity set name and etc., if you see, they are obsolete. If we, as they are made obsolete, it is just enough for us to provide this this one, yeah, IO technical request context. So this IO technical request context will help us getting all these information: entity set name, entity name, and source name, whatever it is. These key tabs, navigation path, everything. So these are all the parameters can be uh, retrieved from this technical request context. So where we have this technical request context, everything. So that information is available in this change set process, change set data. So data provider is going to be entry provider in this one. Okay, and expand is going to be expand node here. Okay, and technical request context. So let's see. So this is not going to be a straightforward one. So we need to we need to do some type conversion here for what is that, context something, context or request context, yeah, yes, request context. So this is the request context we'll be having here, and we just enable this ER deep entity, and this ER deep entity, if we want to send this a response. Okay, so this response again we will be collecting into the uh, data format. So here this data is going to be type reference data again. Let me go ahead here. L or deep entity type reference to data. So LR deep entity. So we need to collect this response for each and every change set coming into this CT change set data. So by calling this method, what we are saying, okay, this is my data. Go ahead and process it and bring back the response, whatever after processing. And this response must be collected into this CT change set data. So where this response is going to be placed in this is yes, and in this one ls change set response, maybe entity, yeah, entity data. So this is the entity data it will be carrying back to the consumer. Okay, so rest all the information stays as it is. For now, we have done this for create deep entity. And what if the operation is different? If it is a create entity, else if, or we could put this as a switch condition. So it's a CE, I think, create entity. So here, if you observe this, it's a generic method being called here. We will be just calling based on the particular entities here. So in this create entity point of view, we will not be making calls to these methods here. We will not be making calls to these methods. So we will not be picking up, okay, if it is create entity, compare this entity set name and make call to this entity, this method, and like that. We will not be doing that. So there is framework method from application services, whatever application runtime service, whatever we have seen earlier. So if you see here, this create entity from not this one. Yeah, uh, application runtime create entity. Yes. So application service runtime. So create entity here. We will be calling this one. So we just make call. If we make this call, we have already seen in this one create entity. So there is implementation according to its entity set here. If you see, so if this is the entity set, then call this method. We do not want to explicitly make this call, but instead we will be implementing the same in our um, change set process. To change set process and call this one create. It's yeah, it is application service runtime. That's fine. So create entity. Okay. So same. So now we know what needs to be provided for a data provider. So we can see the data provider. Is it ls entry provider here? And as we are not using these parameters, if there is any segregation we need to do, then we definitely need this request context. I think there is it's going to be a syntactic error. Let me first go ahead and then check. So and this one is going to be again the L or it's going to be anything, L or deep entity or whatever. Anyway, it's gonna come back with a type reference data. Okay, so now that's it, and we can make this as a common statement. In each segment, we will be getting the type reference data. Come on.
Hello, Shangal.
Yes.
When we activate the change set process,
Yep.
so individual method calls will not happen. Suppose we are calling trip header.
Yes.
Get into.
Yes. Yes.
So when we added this one here in change set,
Yep.
so by system automatically will detect if it is in change set, it will not call that. How will
Nope.
it happen?
Nope. It's not gonna happen. Okay. So whereas in post calls, that is not gonna happen. Post or update or delete these calls, it's not going to detect automatically. Okay. Only get calls, if this change set processing is not implemented, then only it will be doing that. Okay. So
Then how can we skip that automatically? It will be calling twice, right?
which one?
So if we have one operation, let's say get or any get operation we have added in change set. Okay?
Yes.
Same get entity method will not be calling that.
For get, it is bit different. So for get, it directly uh, goes into the get entity sets by framework itself. So yesterday, if you have seen, we have not implemented batch yesterday, right? Still the framework was able to make batch requests and get the data for get requests, get calls. But whatever the post calls, yes. Yeah.
Fine.
Okay. So this is what I'm just going to stop this one. As I sense, there could be, yep. So it cannot be converted into this type. So what I do, I'm not pretty sure even now it accepts. Yeah, it will not accept. What I will have to do, nope, this is even not going to happen. I was trying to avoid one step, but it's not allowing me to do that. Anyway, that's fine. So if I go into this one, the IO technical request context. So this is the reference. I will convert into this one and I'll pass it. Data hello technical context equals to, sorry, type reference to this one, and now I'll just do a casting here, a request context, and I'll pass this technical context here and here as well. Yeah, let's see, that's fine. So let me remove all this. If you are referring, I don't want you to get confused easily. Yeah, and the city change set is going to be as it is. Select all of them, activate. Perfect. So our change set has been implemented now. So we can prepare our batch and we can straight away make post calls. Select, go here. So in this case, we will be just yeah. So now we will be following our OData site to prepare our payload. So this is how our payload should look like. Okay. So now let me go here and add some headers to it. So header name, content type. So in this place, we will be adding JSON. Okay. So whereas we will be inputting JSON data, not the XML data. So here, if you see here, content type, we will still need to put this multi-part mixed. And if we are sending only a payload, then it is JSON, but we will be sending the mixed data as well. So to understand these change sets and etc., it needs to be mentioned explicitly that it is mixed as well. And boundary, let me take this boundary, and this boundary is going to be, let's say, for example, my trip batch. Done. Now we see the content type has been added here, and let me see. So as a beginning, so this is what my starting statement to start the batch. So hyphen, two hyphens, my trip batch. So I started my batch, and next if you see again there is content type here. So this content type again multi-part and mixed, and boundary equal to, this time it is going to be a change set, not the batch. So inside the batch we are dealing with the change sets, so that I'll say change set 1. Okay. Content type, content length, we definitely do not really need to mention for our example. Now I'm starting my change set. So what is going to be in my change set? So let me start my change set 1, and in the change set 1 again content content type, application, HTTP, and encoding binary. Let me copy as it is. And now what is the call I'm going to make? So let me copy this, call the details, post. Yes, I'm going to make a post on what? So this is what my entity set. I will be replacing this with my entity set. So I'm going to post travel header. That's correct. So now this is what is going to be my payload, and content type is going to be the application or JSON here, JSON payload. And let me remove this one. That's okay. Content length, I don't need to specify the content length. So that's it. And here there is another change set. So let me go ahead and add another change set after this. So I'm just copying all of it. So in general, we do not need to prepare any payload like this. So the consumer will be making the understandable request to OData service. So do I need to personally do all these preparations, etc.? The answer is no. We don't need to do that. So here I'm making another post with the change set 2. So this change set 2 done. Now I'll be finishing off with my uh, change set. I think I missed something. I do not need to really. Okay, that's fine. So by this, the change set has been finished. Okay. So now we have finished with change set processing. Change set 1 done, and batch also finished. Close my batch as well. It's kind of template, you just need to follow. So while preparing this manual data, we do expect some errors. So even if you see here, I'm maintaining 2 spaces in between. For some reason, gateway expects to maintain these 2 spaces between the information. Okay, it is very specific one. So this is how we make the batch call. So now still there is one mistake. Whenever we are making batch calls, so batch call is going to be always a post call for us. So whatever the put, patch, get, whatever the operation is going to be, that will be explicitly mentioned inside the batch as a change set. So for batch, always it's going to be a post call. And also there will not be any entity set specification for batch processing. So always it is going to be $batch. So inside it, we can use entity the details, trip details, and we can apply a get operation as well. So whenever you are practicing on this particular topic, so don't create all the change sets in one go, because as I mentioned, it is very sensitive. You just prepare one chain set and test it. If that works fine, then go ahead and add another chain set. So that's how we just work on this particular one. Okay, so this content ID, I do not need this content ID, I'll remove it. And here as well, content ID, we do not need this one. So this content ID, basically if there is any dependency, we just use this content ID. So we refer content ID here, and some in the dependent entity content reference, we use this ID as a content reference. So let me save this as an example first. So it's not going to be deep post dollar batch. So batch request with deep trip create. Okay, so now let me execute it and see 202. So in this case, we always receive a response, but the response inside the response we will have the responses according to the chain sets. So if you see here, unsupported media type. So unsupported media type, somewhere we might be specified some different types here. I think application or JSON. Yes, this is correct. Encoding, binary encoding. Okay, let me stop the recording. We do not want all these to be recorded.